Hi guys, I sat down with Fleurdelys and Cartethyia voice actor Amanda Rischel to pick her brain what she thinks about her characters, Wuthering Waves as a whole, the community, as well as much, much more. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So thank you very much for being with me today. Could you just introduce yourself to everyone that's listening today?
Of course. My name is Amanda Rischel, and I'm a voice actor, and I'm most well known for playing Cartethyia and Fleurdelys in Wuthering Waves.
And what was your introduction to Wuthering Waves, and had you heard of it before being approached for this role?
I had heard of it because I know it was nominated for a few awards last year, and I kind of stay in touch with all of that. So I had heard of it, but I hadn't played it. I hadn't seen a lot of the game, so I didn't really know what it was about. And when you audition for games, there's so much secrecy about the games. So you never really know what the project is. Mm-hmm. So when I was approached to audition, I didn't really know anything about what game it was going to be. I just knew that I would be playing a character or auditioning for a character that had two different sides to them, which I thought was really intriguing. Yeah. I was probably one of the first people to see the concept art of the character because they had the art of the two characters on the audition sides.
Oh, I see.
So I got to see what they looked like, which obviously gave me a good idea of how they would be different, but I didn't really know anything about the game. So my introduction to it was working on this project, and it wasn't actually until probably a few months into recording that I realized what project I was working on. And so when I found out that it was Wuthering Waves, I was like, oh, okay, I need to look this up. And so I started deep diving as much as I could into, content creators, anyone who had, a few videos or guides up there so I could kind of figure out what the game was about. And the more I learned, the more I just thought, wow, okay, this is deep. There is some interesting lore. There are, the whole idea of it being based around sound. I think is such an interesting conceit. I've not seen that in, a lot of games have music as a prominent feature, but to make the gameplay around the idea of music and harmonies and dissonance, I thought was so interesting. And it made a lot of the lines I had to say make more sense. So.
Yeah. One thing I've heard often brought up by other voice actors, like I'm in Japan, and I've read some of the voice actors interviews from over here. And some of them have also said like some of the particular jargon was a bit difficult to get through sometimes, and it was like they weren't sure what was going on, but once they understood like what kind of world it was, like what it was based around, it made a lot more sense and made it easy to get through. But you're not the only one that's had a bit of issues like trying to get through like, what's this word mean again?
I think inevitably when you come into a project that's been going for a while, there's so much information in the game that the player will get over time drip fed. So, by the time you get to 2.0, which is when I first got involved, there's already so much that's been established. And then when you come in, some nice employee from Kuro has to sort of try and give you like the speedy version of what is resonance, what is, a tacit discord, what is an echo, like all of that has to be, summarized really quickly. And you're like, okay, wow, there are a lot of things here. But, as you work on it, you kind of start figuring it out, and thankfully there's always someone who's from the writing team who can help you if you're like, can you remind me, what is this, what does that mean? So they make it really easy.
Oh, so they were like supportive of you like throughout the entire process?
Yeah. There's such a lovely collaborative environment when you do like a recording session, because you'll have whoever's directing you'll have the engineer, but typically there will be a few members from the client or the developer who are on that call and who can, offer input and explain what's going on, because you only really see your own lines. So, there's a lot of the story that maybe you don't really, you need someone to tell you what's going on, what just happened, what's this about. So yeah, I feel like there's always a good supportive environment where any questions you have will get answered. So that really helps.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, nice. I mean, obviously, I'm not familiar with the voice acting, like what the process is on your side of things. So, like, hearing that you weren't fed any lines from the other characters, you only had your lines. You had to like kind of get through that. It's quite interesting.
I mean, to an extent, you do sometimes see the other characters. If it's a dialogue, you'll see, of course, what the other character is saying, and if that voice actor has recorded their lines before you, maybe they will be able to play them back. So you are, directly responding to them. But if you're the first person recording, obviously you just have the lines in text, and maybe the director will read them in with you. But other than that, they will just obviously skip anything in the script that you aren't in. So, sometimes there can be big jumps in the story where you're like, oh, okay, that happened.
Oh, now I'm here. Okay.
Yeah, you just have to go with it and be like, yeah, okay, cool.
So, like, in your own words, what kind of character is Cartethyia? We're going to get into her other half later, but for now, what do you think about Cartethyia herself?
So I think when we meet her, there's obviously a bit of mystery about her because we don't know a lot about her and she doesn't know a lot about herself. And I think there's a really lovely vulnerability to Cartethyia when we meet her first, because she still has an idea of what she wants to be, who she wants to be. She has these ideals and values, this sort of knightly doctrine that she wants to follow. She wants to do what's right. She wants to find out the truth. But she also has doubts because she has incomplete memories and she has fears about who she could be, what she could be. And I just think what's so lovely about Cartethyia is that despite that fear, despite those worries and doubts, she still just chooses to be positive. She chooses to be a kind person and someone who pushes on and insists on finding out the truth, even if it would hurt her. She still is determined to find out at all costs because that's what's right, and she's not someone who can pretend. She's not someone who can just ignore something and then, it doesn't exist. It is real, and she wants to find out what the truth is no matter what, so she can deal with it. It's easy to see Cartethyia and think, oh, she's fragile or she's very young, but I think she has a strength, an underrated strength, in that she is determined. She is resilient in her own way, and I think that carries through right till the end. Even if she's not physically as strong as other characters, she still stands up for what she believes. She's not afraid to make sacrifices. She's not afraid to make hard choices. And I think that's really inspirational about her.
Yeah, I mean, going through the story, she made a lot of choices. Like you go through her through her journey, like from not knowing anything about herself to like finding out everything about herself, and like how she's dealing with her emotions through that story, and after finding everything out, willing to make that sacrifice, like the ultimate sacrifice. It was fantastic to see that play out in the story. It was really, really great. Like the way, again, your performance is also one of the big parts of that. If you hadn't delivered lines in certain ways, then they just wouldn't have hit. So it was really good to see that play out on screen, I
think she has a kind of maturity to her, as young as she presents. I still think there's a wisdom in the way she deals with it. We see her find out these things gradually, and she is disturbed sometimes, she's saddened sometimes, because the more she finds out, the more she also becomes aware of her loss, friends that she has lost, loved ones that are gone, but she still faces those things with maturity. She doesn't pretend it didn't happen, she doesn't gloss over it, she feels everything she feels, but she still decides to move on and make it right. And I just think it's a lovely way of seeing how someone can deal with uncertainty, doubt, and fear and grief in a mature and healthy way. No. So yeah, I thought it was really lovely to get to have that journey with her.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, how did you approach the role of Cartethyia? Like, was there any changes like from where you started when you first saw the role, and like how it might have changed throughout the time as you read through the lines? Run me through that.
Of course. So I learned more about her as the story progressed, of course, because I was finding out alongside, I suppose, her and the player as the story was unveiled. And yeah, I thought it was interesting to see again how the first time we meet her is at the Carnival, and it's this sort of very short little dreamy sequence where she's still, quite happy in a way, or she doesn't seem too burdened. She's just sort of happy to be there doing her little dance, happy to interact with someone. And I thought, okay, that's a lovely, kind, gentle character. Oh, she's really lovely. But then the more I learned about what was actually going on and getting to explore those doubts and fears, I thought, okay, there's actually so much to her, And I think being a positive and bright and hopeful, idealistic character while having doubts and fears and going through grief, I think just makes her all the more impressive to me. So I think my understanding of her, but also my admiration for her grew the more I got, into her journey. And And I thought she's such a good example, especially when I got to sort of the end of the 2.2 storyline. I was really impressed and I suppose inspired by how even in a moment where she feels she doesn't have a lot to offer other than sacrifice, you know, even though she is not a match, you know, for the opponents she tries to fight, she still picks up a sword. You know, even not being the strongest fighter, she still picks it up. She still makes a difference. So I think it's a good example of how you can feel like you are insignificant or that you aren't able to make the change you want, but even just trying has an effect. And she does, not, you know, on her own save the day, but she contributes to saving the day. What she does have an effect. It does help Rover. It does change the outcome. So I just think it's, yeah, I loved her from the beginning, but I just loved all the new sides I saw to her. And she is funny, you know, in her own way. I think she is a funny character. I think she's, it's easy to underestimate her and think, oh, she's just very, very serious, but it's serious content. And I feel like it's nice that we get these little moments of brevity where, you know, like if you offer her the wrong food, you know, she'll respond to that.
Pizza with a particular topping on there as well. Yeah. When you were going through the process, how much freedom did you have, like, to like improvise or like add your own kind of creative input in there? Did you have any of that while you're going through the recording process?
I think in terms of the lines, the dialogue, there's not a lot of room for improvisation in a game like this, at least not for this character. And it's simply to do with the fact that we need to make sure that in every version of the game, no matter what language you're playing in, you are getting a similar experience in terms of the information you're getting, how you're getting it, how it's worded, you know, it's all very precise. And so I don't really think it's possible to let actors improvise too much. You know, if it came down to how will you respond, like what kind of noise will you make? So for instance, with the pizza incident, you know, like maybe you would just say, you know, be disgusted. And then, you know, you have a little room to interpret what does a disgusted noise sound like, or how are you disgusted? How much are you hiding it? So I suppose you have freedom and the ability to offer input that way in what does she laugh like, or, you know, how polite is she going to be even when saying to someone, I think your food is disgusting? Those are the kind of things you can have input on, but the text is kind of fixed, and it has to be.
Yeah.
But I felt like I had freedom in the sense that, you know, nobody told me you have to do the voice this way. You know, there was obviously a shared vision of what the character was like, what, you know, she was going to be young, she was going to be, you know, a brighter, dreamier kind of character. But then the more you progress in the story and the more she learns, there starts to be a bit of weight and heaviness. Because if you think about it, you know, she is the starting point for the other counterpart of her, right? So you have to see how the more she learns, the more that weight comes back into her and burdens her a little bit. But yeah, I felt like it was fun, and there's definitely room to play in the sessions with how you read certain lines. So I appreciate that.
Well, speaking of that, did you have like a favorite scene or a moment to record, like with Cartethyia, or maybe even Fleurdelys, but did you have a favorite scene?
I think for Cartethyia, it was the food moment, simply because it's such a nice pause. You know, I know it's an optional dialogue. I feel like a lot of people saw it, but it's just nice to have that moment, you know, sort of in the midway point where there's just a little bit of silliness. And I think it's so funny that, you know, Cartethyia's favorite meal is a salad. I think that's just hilarious, you know, to me, that you know, out of everything she could have picked, it's like, oh yeah, I just really like the salad. And the fact that she has such a strong reaction to something as, you know, innocent as a pizza with crown apple, you know. I just thought that was funny because that's the first time we really get to see her break her composure a little bit, because she is so polite, she is so kind, that she has this very, you know, sincere and kind exterior, and that's just the first moment we see her be like, ugh. And I just thought that was really funny.
Well, of course, with her being offered the pizza, the person who offered the pizza was Rover. What do you think Cartethyia's relationship is with Rover? Like, how do you see it? I mean, of course, everyone has their own particular opinions of what it could be. Like, do you think it's either like more platonic, romantic, friendly, distant? Like, what do you think?
I think what's really clever about how those interactions are written is that they are open to interpretation. So I think for me, certainly the way I played Cartethyia, I think what is clear to me is that there is definitely deep respect for Rover from Cartethia's side. There's admiration. I think Rover embodies a lot of the values and the ideals that Cartethyia is striving for. I think she sees Rover as this kind of knightly figure to aspire to, someone who does the right thing, someone who is powerful, who helps other people selflessly. So I think there is such a respect there and an admiration. And I think as the story progresses and as they learn more about each other and bond, the fact that Rover shows Cartethyia such kindness in acknowledging her fears and concerns, but saying, you're not defined by these labels. No matter what we find out, you are you, and you are not a bad person just because we find this or that out about you. And I think all of that kindness means by the end, certainly, I would say Cartethyia is loyal as well to Rover. I think there is a loyalty, a kindness, an admiration, a respect, and an affection. And I think there's a care there that she says, you have done something incredible for me that I didn't think anyone could or would do. I will do the same for you. I will be that person for you that you were for me, even if that means opposing you, should the worst happen. Because I care about you that much, I will do for you what you did for me. And I think it's up to each individual Rover to then interpret what is the nature of that affection. Is it friendly? Is it a sibling bond? Is it sort of a knight in arms comrade thing? Is it more than that? I think that's what's lovely. Every Rover can decide what their relationship is with Cartethyia, of going through that journey with her. And I think they're all valid. That's how I see it. That's
the benefit of an art, really. Like, everyone can take away their own personal impression of what they see in front of them. So yeah, I can definitely see that. I was wondering, I don't know if you have anything prepared. Could you do an iconic line, like a reading of an iconic line from Cartethyia? Is that possible?
I haven't prepared it, but again, off the top of my head, I might get it slightly wrong, but I'll do the pizza one.
Okay, let's go.
Reaction, because I think it's so funny.
It seems to be your favorite one, the pizza scene.
Yeah, it is. So sorry if I'm not 100% verbatim. What's that? Is this what people eat nowadays? Thank you so much for your kindness, but I am no longer able to eat, thank God. So you should save this for someone who would really appreciate it. Thank you. To that effect.
No, that was great. That was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I listened to it, I was remembering playing through it and getting to that scene. I was like, yeah, just the absolute sheer disgust in the line there. It was fantastic, wonderful.
What I think is so funny as well is she catches it and then she actually apologizes. She's saying, but then she says, oh, no, do you know what? This is so kind of you, but I think someone else deserves this even more. It would be wasted on me. You should keep that. She tries to keep it, polite again, but, she just actually offends the pizza even further.
Moving on, we've been talking about before, her other half of Fleurdelys. Yeah. What do you think of the Fleurdelys character?
I love her. I think she's such a cool character.
Same.
And yeah. I feel like a lot of people think she's a really cool character, and she is. She looks very cool. Everything she does is kind of cool. Her lines are very cool to say. I think what I really like about her is that she is so determined in her defiance. She is so unapologetically defiant. I really like that. I think it's nice to see a character who just does not hold back, even against, essentially a god. Just saying, you know what, you're wrong, I'm going to stop you. I respect that so much. I think she's so cool. I think it's so impressive that she's able to hold her ground for that long. But I think she's also, again, if Cartethyia shows us one thing about, finding strength even when maybe you don't feel like you have much, I think Fleurdelys is also interesting to me because she strikes me as someone who is so strong, so capable, so resilient, that she feels obligated to take on this burden for everyone. It's my burden. I'm the only one who can handle it. I'll do it alone. And I think that's something a lot of us probably do. We take on burdens because we feel like I can handle it, so it should fall on me. But even if you are strong and competent and resilient, you can ask for help. It shouldn't always necessarily fall on you just because you are strong. Even a strong person needs support, and a strong person shouldn't always be the one to bear the burden. So I really respect her for it. But I think, together they have sort of two sides of this, finding strength when you're weak, but also your strength doesn't mean that you always have to be strong, that you can never, allow yourself anything else. So I think she's a wonderful, very compelling character. I was very excited when I got to the part of the story where she was more in the mix. I thought she was fantastic, and I'm very happy to see that people seem to have received her really well as well, not just because she looks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, personally, it's really hard to choose between Cartethyia and Fleurdelys. I think I'm more on the side, I think I prefer Fleurdelys, but in saying that, we don't know too much of her side of things. We spent most of the time with Cartethyia, so personally, I'm interested to find out more about Fleurdelys going forward in the future. I know you can't say anything about that. That's just my personal, what I'm looking forward to in the future. As in, zip on that one. But I was interested, how did you differentiate between the two characters? Because you play both Cartethyia and Fleurdelys as well. In the performances, how did you make a distinction between the two?
It was sort of agreed, very early on, even at the audition stage, that they would have different voices. Because when you're playing a character that has two sides to them, you can choose to make the voices very similar, but have them, be have different intentions. So maybe, sometimes you see characters where there's the good side and the dark side of a character or something. And so they sound similar, but they have very different intention, and that makes them feel different. For Cartethyia and Fleurdelys, because there's also an age gap between them, because Cartethyia is sort of, the version of Fleurdelys that existed 20 years ago or something.
Yeah, so she's frozen in time.
Gap.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So we have an age gap, and you could say that she's also frozen in development simply by virtue of she doesn't have the information, because she doesn't remember, that Fleurdelys has. So I thought it would be great to obviously, keep all of that, keep the age difference, and that also, reflects in the difference in pitch. Cartethyia has a younger, brighter voice. Fleurdelys has a more mature, dark voice, which is more in my own sort of speaking range. It's sort of here, whereas Cartethyia is lighter or higher in my pitch range. But I think one thing I also really wanted to do to differentiate them, it's a silly thing. It was just because I thought, well, Fleurdelys has the majority of the, knowledge, the power, the strength. Cartethyia doesn't have a lot of that. The majority of it resides with Fleurdelys. So I thought it would be fun to see if I could get a vocal quality for Cartethyia that showed that lightness, that lack of grounding in terms of knowledge and strength and power. She is more sort of on her own. She doesn't have a lot to fight back with. She doesn't have a lot of information. So there is that sense that she's a little unmoored and, she could blow away. So I just wanted to try and give her this sort of airy, breathy quality to her voice. Whereas Fleurdelys, she needs more heft because, she's swinging a very big sword. She's fighting something. And I wanted to try and see if I could just get a bit of strain, this feeling that she's constantly under pressure. She's constantly fighting. So there is this strain, there is this tiredness in her voice because she's been going for so long. So it's, everything becomes more like this because she's really tired. Yeah. So, it was just trying to show again the contrast, I suppose, in their situation. And you could see Cartethyia as almost, like a disembodied reflection of Cartethyia, whereas Fleurdelys, is still very much there fighting. And I just tried to make them as different as I could, but still having them feel like they could come together and be one person, which, as I'm sure everyone has caught on, they do. Yeah. Ultimately, the voice changes by the end of the story again.
Yeah, that was something I think people weren't entirely sure of. Was it intentional or was it not? At the end of the story, sorry to get to spoilers for those that haven't gone there. After the whole battle and everything, and Cartethyia comes back, it seems like her voice did change to be a kind of midway point between the two, and that was intentional. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
nice.
And it is the kind of thing where, because it's subtle,
Mm.
I suppose I was wondering, will people notice this, or will people think that was just really inconsistent? I think the majority of people I've seen certainly did catch that and say,
Yeah.
she sounds more assertive, more sure of herself,
Mm.
because that was kind of the compromise. I thought, well, she is still in the younger form,
Mm-hmm.
so her voice should still feel young, but with the confidence of
Mm.
Fleurdelys.
Mm.
And I think also the playfulness that original Cartethyia had, because what we know of her in the story in the game is that when she was young, she did some fun things.
Yeah.
She was a fun, mischievous girl. She did she went to some parties. She started the party.
Yeah.
She did a lot of fun things. She was a spirited person,
Mm.
and I thought, okay, we need to see that as well. And it also makes sense to me that after the conclusion of the events in 2.2, a lot of weight has been lifted from her shoulders. She knows who she is. She's become whole. She has fulfilled the purpose, that she's been working towards for so long. So there is such a weight off her shoulders. That means she can go back to being this, well, playful, mischievous, but stubborn as well character. And I think it's so typical for her to immediately find a new goal. She's just overcome this massive thing. And her first thing is, oh, I know what I want to do now. I want to become stronger than you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a funny thing. She immediately sets a new, very ambitious goal. And, depending on how you respond to her, you can tease her a little bit about that, and she'll tease you right back, which is so different to how earlier Cartethyia would have responded. And I'm glad that a lot of people picked up on that. There is a subtle little merge of the voices there. So it's still Cartethyia-like, but with a bit more confidence and playfulness.
Yeah, like there weren't that many lines like after the whole conclusion, so we weren't sure. Like, wait, hang on, we need to listen more a bit on there. But it's good to get a bit of confirmation on that. And we saw also a bit of her playfulness in the recent 2.3 anniversary. I don't know if you've seen the live stream. There's a bit of a cutscene where we see Cartethyia dancing around with everyone on stage. So we see that. That looks really cool. And well, speaking of like Cartethyia and Fleurdelys, what was like the dynamic between the two? Like, I'm of course it's two halves of the same coin, like the actual same entity, and it's not exactly the same kind of thing of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or anything like that, or anything. What do you think is like the main core dynamic between the two of them?
It's interesting because I feel like in some ways they're very similar, and in other ways they're very different. This is just my interpretation, but I kind of see it as older sister, younger sister. There's even though we don't see them interacting that much, the conversation that they have at the end of the story is kind of the first time we see them really interacting. And I think it's really sweet that Cartethyia is offered the choice to forget about everything. Forget Fleurdelys, forget, all the traumatizing events. And she refuses it. She says, no, I don't want that. I want to remember it. That's made me who I am. That is my truth. I wouldn't be me without it. And Fleurdelys is saying, but you would be happier, like I'm the burden, I'm all the pain and the hardship. Why would you want to keep that? You could be happier without me. So I feel like that there is that very sweet relationship towards each other that kind of gives me this older sister, younger sister, they're both trying to protect each other in a way, but ultimately choose each other, which I think is really beautiful. But that's sort of how I saw it.
Oh, great. And I've noticed you've been like online quite a bit in recent weeks. Like, how in touch are you with the Wuthering Waves community?
I feel like I haven't, gone to the furthest reaches yet, but I have seen lots of lovely, comments. When I announced that I was playing the English version of Cartethyia, a lot of people reached out and said really lovely things. I've seen, amazing fan art, music, video edits, like all these really creative things that people have done to show appreciation for Cartethyia and Fleurdelys. And I try to just, share that as much as I can, because I think it's really wonderful to see anyone feeling inspired to make their own art. I feel like I've gotten a really good impression of the community. Maybe I haven't gone far enough, but I feel like there seems to be such a genuine enjoyment of the game, of the story, such appreciation for all the hard work that goes in it, because the voice actors, I guess we get probably a lot of credit because we're the voices that people hear, but we stand on the shoulders of such a massive team of writers, artists, animators, the localization teams, the directors, the sound team, everyone. There's so many people involved in making the story as epic and beautiful and well presented as it is. And I just really enjoyed watching everyone's reaction to 2.2, seeing how people were blown away by the visuals, the music. I had no idea of what it would look like until I saw, I didn't see it before, any of you guys, because when I'm recording, I just see the lines. I see the lines in a spreadsheet. Maybe for animated sequences, I'll see some very early storyboard art, but I have no conception of what the final thing will look like. And when I saw that, I also felt like, wow, this is really epic. This is like, the ending sequence after the battle with Fleurdelys. There's a moment where they fall through the sky, and I thought, this is like a Makoto Shinkai film.
That was a great scene. Yeah, Makoto Shinkai. I'm glad you dropped that as well. I saw that. Yeah.
I just thought, you know what, this is such a spectacular. I forgot I was in it. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like, wow, what's going to happen? So I'm aware of the community. Everyone's been really lovely to me. I try to find the balance between engaging but not being not outstaying my welcome too much. I don't think voice actors necessarily need to be in every conversation. I'm always flattered if someone wants to talk to me, especially about anything to do with voice acting, but I just try to keep my ears open, and if I see anything exciting, I share it on, and I'm as excited as anyone to see what happens going forward.
Speaking of fan art as well, I don't suppose you've seen like a particular meme of Cartethyia going around with a finger pointing up, wearing glasses. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, it's amazing.
And there's a more cartoony version as well, which I thought is really cool.
They're both so great. I think that's she is a little nerd. I feel like that captures her really well. It
does. You're very free to deny this. Would it be possible for you to, in Cartethia's voice, say, actually, or would it be possible for you to do that?
I'm so glad you asked.
Oh, God!
Actually...
Sorry, I was laughing too much. I was laughing. One more time, please.
Actually...
That is fantastic. That was very. I am shocked. I did not expect that at all. Thank you so much. You can see me turning bright red. I'm a bit sunburned already, but that just made me turn like an absolute cherry tomato.
I'm happy to make anyone laugh. I don't take myself very seriously.
That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Finally, Inyad, do you have anything that you would like to say to everyone watching, all the rovers, and anyone interested in possibly checking out Wuthering Waves in the future?
I would just say do it. Whether you are an existing, experienced Day One rover, or whether you are new to Wuthering Waves, whether you are someone who's going to check it out because it's come out on Steam today.
Yes.
Do it. It's brilliant. I obviously am very new to it myself, but everything I have seen is fantastic. And I am going to play it as soon as I get a chance. I want to try and play it myself, and I think it's this is only year one. There's so much more to come that we can all look forward to. And to all the rovers out there, I just want to say thank you for being lovely. Thank you for welcoming me into the community. Thank you for all your Cartethyia memes. I love them. Keep them coming. I am always down for some banter, so don't hold back. Send me all your memes. I love them. Just stay lovely. Stay being nice to each other, and just enjoy the game and have a good time. Really appreciate you.
Again, a massive thank you to Amanda for agreeing to this interview. It was really fantastic to get to speak with her. It was an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to speak again in the future. And guys, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because I have more videos like this coming up in the future, specifically with my next interview for the Cantarola voice actor Alexandra Gelf, which will be coming out soon. So until next time, I will see you in the next video. Peace.